G'day folks, I'm Mick van Zyl from Ironman 4x4. Welcome to the next phase of Christo's Hilux build. We're just about finished with the vehicle. I think all that's left is to put some sign writing on it, then it'll be done. Other than today's project, which is a sound installation, which we've been promising you. So for this vehicle, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting in a Rockford Fosgate sound system. High quality product from the USA. These guys have been around since the early 70s and they really know what they're doing, especially when it comes to high fidelity sound, clarity, power. It's got it all. A very high quality product. Now folks, Rockford Fosgate have three distinct lines in their product range. They have Prime, and then they have Punch, and then they have the Power range. But don't be fooled by the word entry level. This Prime gear is really, really good, and certainly a cut above the rest. Now what we're going to be doing in the Hilux is replacing the standard Toyota speakers, which are these little jobbies over here, with the same size of speaker, but from Rockford Fosgate. And interestingly, you can see the difference between the size of the magnet on the original Toyota speaker and the size of the magnet on the back of the Rockford Fosgate speaker. And that's just some indication of the power handling and therefore performance of the speaker. Now, the Hilux came with 4 speakers in the doors, 2 in front and 2 in the rear, and a weeny little tweeter up in the quarter panel by the rear view mirrors. So what we're going to be doing, in the front we're going to be replacing them with what we call a split system. Now you may have seen in some of our other videos I've explained this, but I'll just run through it again. This is what we call a split system, where we split the tweeter, which plays the high frequencies, and the woofer, which plays the lower frequencies. So this speaker is designed to play mid-bass and your mid-frequencies very well, not so good at the higher frequencies, and conversely, the tweeter is very good at playing your clear high treble sounds, but it can't obviously play any bass sounds. So we split the two, and it also helps with the sound stage because the tweeters are mounted quite high up on the front of the dashboard and the woofers are in the door. And what that gives you is it gives you a nice lifted sound stage. Imagine you go to a rock concert, the guys are on stage in front of you, they're never behind you, they're not down there. They're just up ahead of you, and that's where you want the sound in your vehicle, is sort of above the dash in front of the windscreen. In the rear doors, what we'll be fitting is a set of what we call coaxial speakers. So that's a woofer with a tweeter mounted inside it, a coaxial speaker. And those are just for rear full. Remember, the music must come from in front of you. So that is what we call a rear full speaker, just to give some music in the back of the cabin as well. What we're also going to be adding to this system is a subwoofer. We're going to be using Rockford Fosgate's 10-inch shallow subwoofer. You can see it's quite shallow compared to a normal subwoofer. And that is mounted into a dedicated custom-made subwoofer enclosure over there. That enclosure it's not just a box that's made. It's got a specific size, a specific volume, specific shape. It's also a ported box, and it is going to enhance the performance of this subwoofer. Now in the rear of the Hilux, the rear backrest of the back seat doesn't fold forward. It's actually bolted into place, and all that space behind the backrest is wasted. So we're going to fill that space with this custom-made subwoofer enclosure. One of the most important aspects of this build, however, is sound deadening, which we've done to our other vehicles, and we'll certainly be doing it to the Hilux. And we're going to be using a product called Silent Coat. It's also distributed by Audiomotive, a high-quality sound deadening material. Now what this actually does is it keeps the road noise and outside noise, wind noises outside the vehicle, and it keeps the music inside the vehicle. And the other thing it does is, because it's quite weighty and it's stuck to the door panels or any other metal panels, it stops any metal resonance which interferes with your enjoyment of the music. And it's basically a very heavy foil that has a black sticky substance on the back, so it's self-adhesive, and you cut it to size. And what we'll be doing on the Hilux is we'll be sound deadening and applying that to the inner skin, the inside of the outer skin of the door, and then also on the inner skin of the door. So it's like a double skin on the doors, creating a bit of a speaker box, more or less, but as I said, keeping the sounds you don't want in the car out and the music inside the vehicle. It's very important when doing an installation like this to use the correct wiring. So we're going to be using some Rockford Fosgate high quality wiring. We're going to be using 16 gauge for the speaker wires, and then for the power wire to the amplifier, a big thick 4-gauge wire. It's very important to use the correct gauge of wire when you're supplying the amplifier with power. Amplifiers are rated to run at 14.5 volts. That's when they deliver their optimum performance. If you fit wire that's too thin, you're going to have a voltage drop between the battery and the amplifier is not going to work at an optimal level. You're not going to get 300 watts out of the amplifier. It'll be a lot less. We're also going to be using some high quality RCA cables from Rockford Fosgate. proper fuse holders and proper high quality rated fuses. Now, the Hilux, the original sound system in the Hilux was pretty poor to start out with. I've said this in a previous video, and I'll say it again. It's actually very, very poor. But the head unit in the new facelifted Hilux is actually not bad from a feature point of view. It now features Apple CarPlay, which I know Christo is going to use. He has an Apple phone, and I think it's a necessity in this day and age to have a system where you're not using your phone in the car, that you can push a button and talk to CarPlay and it'll do what you want it to do. So we are going to actually retain the original head unit in the Hilux and just add these components to the head unit. But it's not quite that straightforward for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the Hilux head unit doesn't feature any RCA outputs. In other words, we won't be able to plug the RCA cables directly into the head unit. Now, while the Rockford Fosgate amplifier does accept both low level and high level, that's the speaker level inputs, we're opted to use a product by Audio Control, which is a company like Rockford Fosgate, a very high-end American company, and they're all about signal processing. So we're going to be using this product as an interface between the head unit of the Hilux and the Rockford Fosgate 4-channel amplifier. So this little device, it doesn't only do that. Another thing that it does do is on the original head unit, as you start turning the volume up, the Toyota head unit actually starts cutting away bass sounds. It's what we call bass roll-off. And the reason it does that is so that it doesn't damage the speaker with this very small little magnet on it. So the higher the volume is that you're listening at, the less bass you have in the system. So there's three things that the audio control unit is going to allow us to do. Firstly, it's going to allow us to use the speaker output wires from the original Toyota head unit and plug them straight into this unit, and then it'll convert it to low-level output, which will go from here to the amplifier. The second thing it's going to do is it's going to restore the bass that has been rolled off by the original Toyota head unit. The third feature of the audio control unit is that it features a load generating device. When you unplug the speakers off the original Toyota head unit, there's no more load and it can induce some distortion, and this will prevent that. So for this build, Christo is actually going to do the work himself, and Aubrey from Audiomotive Distributors is going to give him a hand and show him the ropes. So I'm going to hand over to them and let them get stuck in. Folks, that wraps up the sound install on Christo's Hilux. Just to recap very briefly, sound insulation in the doors, all four of the doors, inner and outer skin. Also some sound insulation on the rear panel between the cab and the load bin of the vehicle. Christo opted to stick with the original Toyota head unit, which now features CarPlay, which is very important. In order to allow us to do that, we've had to fit an audio control signal processor, and that features a nice little button which we've mounted under the steering wheel here, where you can adjust the bass level. So older 80s music, crank it up a bit. Perhaps more modern music, you can turn it down a bit if it's too much. Speaker wise, in the front doors we have 6.5-inch splits, that is woofers in the bottom, tweeters up here in the sail panel. In the rear, some 6.75-inch coaxials, all from the Rockford Fosgate Prime range of speakers. To supplement the lower bass frequencies, we have a shallow 10-inch subwoofer in a dedicated box in that dead space behind the seat. And all of that is driven by a 4-channel Prime amplifier. And I must say, it sounds great. If memory serves me, I had a similar system in the Ford, and it sounds as good, if not better, here in the Hilux. And I know Christo is very chuffed with it. So that's really everything that we're going to do to the vehicle. It's off now to the sign writers to have all the Ironman livery put on it. And we'll wrap it up after that, and then it's ready to go to the bush.